Summertime is movie time in America, time for an escape into air conditioning and big screen fantasy. But there's something different about this summer's box office hits. In tonight's Eye on America, Richard Roth looks at a new reality, on the screen and behind it.
A matinee outing for some Los Angeles youngsters this week was anything but an ordinary escape to a summertime movie. It was more like a field trip to their own backyards.
This movie is showing how other people is killing each other. It's showing to let everybody know to stop killing each other.
Many of these kids, many of the people live in South Central, they feel like the movie is about them. Finally, somebody get a chance to tell the real story.
Take your life for granted. This is the craziest place on the planet.
The news across the nation when Boyz in the Hood opened a week ago wasn't in the rave reviews for a small new movie by an unknown director. It was in a brief outbreak of violence, 2 people killed and more than 30 injured at theaters in a dozen states. But the news in Hollywood was in some other numbers, more than $10 million in just a weekend at the box office. Only Arnold Schwarzenegger and a 30-year-old Disney cartoon were making more money than the story of a black youth growing up in LA's toughest neighborhood. And all sorts of people were buying tickets to Boyz in the Hood.
I think it's a good thing to see all different kinds of slices of life.
Quite suddenly, there are all different kinds to be seen.
Both of you's got jungle fever.
From the story of an interracial love affair making chaos on both sides of the color line to an action comedy set in Harlem of the 50s, a small wave of new movies distinctly different from the entertainment industry's standard fare. They're films written and directed by blacks, and that makes the stories brand new to most whites.
Remember, if there's gunfire again, you've got to make it look real.
I think that there is a hunger now in America to have new stories, fresh stories. Once you have African Americans behind the camera, you can get a truthful, insightful explanation of what our lives are about.
The movies may be opening a window on a part of America many whites never see. Getting made because Hollywood's convinced they can be profitable, but they're getting attention partly because they're making people uncomfortable.
If you look back to how African Americans have been treated in the United States, I mean, of course, a little anger is going to come out of that.
It makes me so mad.
There's hardly anyone angrier than Ice Cube in his performance as a rap singer or in his new movie role as a homeboy. But the surprise on the screen is the anger's not all anti-white, a nuance of several new films.
Look, you can be honest with me. You're doing this to me because I'm black, right?
Fine. I'll be honest. I'm doing this because I think you're a bum.
These are not lame whitey type films at all. Many of the late films really focus on the problems, not in terms of anti-white types of feelings, but what blacks can do themselves to cope with and solve the problems in the black community. They're kind of inner-focused.
Focused in director John Singleton's case on the Hood, the neighborhood where he was raised.
If a film is about a specific culture, but yet it appeals to various different cultures, and if everyone can find something in it, then it becomes a larger work.
And now Singleton's hope for Boyz in the Hood may be turning into prophecy, becoming larger in a very literal way. Today, the movie moves into another 80 theaters nationwide. Richard Roth, CBS News, Hollywood.
Good evening. Theater owners in several cities today canceled showings of the inner-city drama Boyz in the Hood after a bizarre spasm of violence during last night's debut of the movie left 1 person dead and at least 23 wounded in cities across the country. The death was reported at an Illinois drive-in, but some of the worst incidents were in California. Richard Roth has our report.
The film opened in more than 800 theaters across the country, and violence broke out in at least 8 states. At a Los Angeles movie mall, gunfire began just as the lights went out, inside a theater and on a street outside. Moviegoers heard it in the parking lot and tried to leave.
We were stuck in there, and the people who were shooting the guns were on foot, and they wouldn't let us out. And the only reason they let us out was because we started beeping the horns.
It was pandemonium, a woman said, even though sheriff's deputies had been there from the beginning, worried it would be a violent night.
Well, we know that 1 person was shot in the buttocks, 1 person was shot, received a gunshot wound to the knee, and the 3rd person was shot in an ankle.
In all, at least 6 people were injured by gunfire in Southern California. Others hurt when knives or guns were drawn in suburban New York. and Ohio, Minnesota, Texas, Wisconsin, and Massachusetts. In Illinois, a man was killed. However, Columbia Pictures today said just a handful of theaters had canceled showings of the movie. The company said it would pay for extra security if theater owners requested it.
This is Los Angeles, gang capital of the nation.
Critics had praised Boyz in the Hood about growing up in a gang-ridden neighborhood of Los Angeles. They called the movie anti-violent, but some pointed out ads for the film didn't make it seem that way. Today, director John Singleton said it wasn't his movie that caused last night's trouble.
I mean, what happened last night was more of an indication of the degeneration of American society than a reflection upon my film.
Still, it was the second time this year that violence accompanied the opening of a major motion picture. In March, the movie was New Jack City, and some theatergoers today were thinking about that.
It sort of makes me a little weary, you know, to go to the theater.
And that's a big worry for an industry built on the premise that entertainment, even based on harsh reality, is supposed to be a safe diversion. Richard Roth, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Now, this year's #1 film by a black director is Mario Van Peebles' New Jack City. But the movie's on-screen violence led to controversy when it was reflected by real-life violence outside of theaters and even in the audience. Tomorrow, New Jack City becomes available in local video stores. But before the movie, each tape will have an important message.
Whether you live in Harlem, whether you live in Beverly Hills, drug epidemic, it's not a black thing, it's not a white thing. It's a death thing. And death doesn't care what color you are.
Mario Van Peebles not only directed and starred in New Jack City, he also directed that public service announcement, part of which we've just seen, and he joins us from Los Angeles this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
And well, it's terrific to have you with us. It's a highly unusual move to start a video with a PSA like that. Give us a sense of how that came about.
Well, when the movie opened up, you know, we had this sort of fracas in Westwood, and it was with people that, and the media forgot to say, that had not seen the movie at all. What they'd seen was the videotape of Rodney King getting beat up. They went to see the movie and didn't get in to see the movie and had a problem with the cops, and so there was a lot of controversy outside the theater that wasn't based on the movie. And one of the things I wanted to do with this film was make a film that on one level is a gangster movie, so kids would go see it and had great music and all that, and then on another level make an anti-drug film. On another level make a multiracial film. I put a Chinese cop and a black cop and a white cop together. And so I wanted a movie that kids would see. You know, if you think of The Godfather, you come out in support of the gangster. If you see New Jack City, you come out in support of the cops. With the PSA, it allowed me as a filmmaker to speak directly to the audience, and I wanted to do it in a tone that wasn't preachy. And I think media is powerful, and we can talk to young people.
Do you think that the anti-drug message got lost?
Oh, no, I don't think it got lost when people saw the movie. I think initially when they saw the poster, they weren't used to seeing a black American on the cover with a gun. I mean, they're used to seeing black Americans play basketball. You know, if you see Schwarzenegger with a gun or Rambo with a gun, but suddenly they saw Wesley Snipes with a gun. And I think that made America initially go, whoa, until they actually saw the movie and saw what the movie was about. But beyond that, I wanted in the music and in the movie and now in the PSA, which is a pretty radical idea to get to speak directly to the audience. I used to work at a drug treatment center, and I just wanted to say a couple things. And I always find it interesting when I get to see what the filmmaker thought he was thinking when he made the movie.
Tell us a little bit about your experience as a drug counselor and how that impacted on the movie and how that's reflected in this PSA and the message you want to get across to young people, old people, whoever watches this videotape of New Jack City.
Oh, it was not I did it when I was about 18, so this is a couple years ago, about 2 years ago.
I don't have any idea how old you are, so I would believe that.
Okay, but it was one of my dad's ideas that I do this. And I just worked there long enough to see the process that some of the people have to go through, and it made me want in New Jack City to really have the victim be one of the leads in the movie. You know, mostly in a gangster movie, you focus on the gangster. In New Jack City, if we wanted kids to say no, we had some role models to say yes to. And in between that, we showed the victim, the average guy, and how he gets stuck. And that's what the PSA deals with in the top of the movie, is that most of the people who get involved in drugs are not either gangsters or cops, but they become victims. And whether you live in Hollywood or whether you live in Compton, the drug epidemic is not a black thing or white thing, it's a death thing. And I wanted to say that, and Warner kind of gave me a shot to do that.
Your film is one of 19 films released this year by black directors. If one looks at those figures, it would sound like maybe possibly good news for directors out there. Is the climate in Hollywood changing?
Well, keep in mind now, there are 400 movies made about a year. So you got to keep the perspective on it. So with 400 movies made a year and only 12 by black directors, it's really a very small percentage of the population and of the movie-going population. So I say about Hollywood, Hollywood's not a, well, it is more of a white thing than a black thing, but most of all, it's a green thing. It's the color of money. So that's my Hollywood slogan.
Are you finding it easier now, though, with the success of New Jack City to launch projects and get investment that I've heard for years has been a real problem for directors out there?
Well, it is. I mean, now, again, with New Jack City, we had such a crossover audience. You know, we had black people saw it, and white people saw it, and green people loved the movie. It's going to do well on Mars and video. That was a joke, I guess.
I got it. I got it.
But so we had a major crossover. You can't go beyond a certain mark without a major white crossover audience. I think we wound up being about 50-50. So that surprised the studios. Anytime you make a movie for, you know, $8 or $9 million, which is what we did for New Jack, and you make, you know, 50 or 49 million back, that's a nice profit margin. You know, if you make a movie for 50 million and you only make 52, that's a smaller profit margin.
Mario, it's nice to see you. We wish you best of luck with your future ventures. Nice to have you
Call
with
me
us.
for the next movie. Let's do it.
We'll be back. New Jack City is causing shockwaves at the box office. It's #2 in the nation, but it's also causing some headlines with shooting and looting at some theaters where it's playing.
It is a war out there. Gone are the days of selling on the street corners.
New Jack City is based on the rise and fall of a Harlem drug lord.
This is the American way.
A movie dealing with drugs, gangs, and violence whose supposed message against those things may have backfired. In Los Angeles this past weekend, 1,500 people, outraged over not getting into a sold-out showing, broke into a riot that lasted more than 2 hours, smashing windows and looting stores. In New York, an argument that erupted inside a theater ended on the street with the shooting death of a 19-year-old. From Las Vegas to Chicago to Sayreville, New Jersey, violence has been reported.
These thrill seekers want to be gangsters. I hate them, so what's up?
It digs up a lot of urban energy in it. That's why I can imagine a lot of violence erupting from this movie.
I guess people can't separate reality from entertainment.
Film critic Elvis Mitchell.
The movie isn't the cause of anything, but the movie obviously attracts what you euphemistically call an urban audience, by which they mean basically a black audience.
So 10 theaters are now dropping New Jack City because of the violence, but almost 890 theaters will continue to show it. And joining us now from Los Angeles are the movie's star and director, Mario van Peebles, and its producers, Doug McHenry and George Jackson. And good morning to all of you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning.
Mario, you have always said that when you came up with the concept of this film, you wanted it to have a very anti-drug message. What's gone wrong?
Well, I think, first of all, I think in particular here in L.A., I mean, it wasn't people who saw the movie. You know, kids come out of this movie applauding a white cop and a black cop who take down a drug dealer. Judd Nelson says in this movie, drugs is not a black thing or a white thing, it's a death thing. And Ice-T says, a drug dealer is the worst kind of brother. He won't give it to his mother or his father, but he'll give it to his boys on the street. I've had people come to me and say, this is the kind of movie that makes drug dealers uncomfortable. So I really take issue with it being something about the movie. People went to see a movie and they couldn't get in. I think also in particular here in L.A., there was a sensitivity already because of the video with Mr. King, that people were already sort of maybe a little sensitive about this whole video situation and came to the movie with certain feelings about whatever that had nothing to do with our movie. And I've had people come. Have you seen the movie yet?
Not yet. No, I have not.
See, again, most of the people who are saying this really haven't taken the time to see the movie, and I really wish they would, because this is a very strong, it's the first gangster movie I've ever seen where you see what the drugs do to people. It's an anti-drug movie, and Ice-T has, you know, Ice-T, we've got a lead, we deliberately chose a lead with Ice-T, who rejected gangs, who went out of gangs. So it's a very strong anti-drug movie. I've got right in my pocket here the reviews that I didn't write that say, see, New Jack City, a slick, important anti-drug movie.
Doug, I'm going to talk to you, ask you this next question. And there's been a lot of talk about whose responsibility it should be to provide extra security if you know you're going to have outbreaks of violence like this. Is that appropriate for the theaters to have to do that?
Well, Paul, I first have to say that we did not like the characterization in the opening of the piece of New Jack City as a gang movie. New Jack City deals with an organized crime family. It would be like saying The Godfather is a gang movie, because gang and urban gang really implies something else, more like the picture like Colors or something, which this picture is distinctly different and separate from. And with respect to the responsibility of security, the good thing about Warner Brothers is that they have offered every theater owner, they have offered to pay for additional security, as well as they have certain guidelines in order to protect people in terms of crowd management. So the issue is not one of whose responsibility. We know that the distributor, Warner Brothers, has already agreed to help theater owners in this regard. The other thing I'd like to say is that this is a tremendously popular movie. Last night, and Monday night, it was the #1 movie in the country. And what we don't want to find is that the violence, which is what your opening segment focused on, as opposed to the content and character of the movie, which is the strong anti-drug message, the strong performances, the great entertainment value, we don't want that to be lost with the focus on the violence, which honestly just occurred in less than 1% of the venues. And in fact, we've gone up from 160 screens to almost 900 screens.
I want to
this
get to
weekend.
George before we run out of time here. And I guess my question to you is, are you surprised by all of this? The kind of violence it seems to be generating and the response of people who can't get into the theater to see the movie?
What I'm very saddened and dismayed by the press is, I think, overreaction to what we've tried to create here. There hasn't been a focus, as Doug and Mario have said, on the strong anti-drug message.
I think we made that clear this morning. That was, in fact, what you were trying to do. And we're going to have to leave it there. And hopefully at some point in time, we'll catch up with the three of you again. Thanks so much for joining us.